Hi there. It's time for our Friday night spiritual insights with Michael Murdad. Thank you so much for joining us. Today, somebody's asked me to talk about basically sexual experiences, but unhealthy sexual experiences and how to deal with those. So essentially, today we're going to go into that a bit. Now, some people say I haven't had that, it doesn't apply to me, but be patient and listen because you may not be learning and listening, hearing this for yourself. It may be so you can help others deal with these kinds of things. Now, long story short, when we say unhealthy sexual experiences, another way to say this is, of course, dealing with traumatic sexual experiences. And again, somebody might say, well, I don't know that I've had traumatic, because you must mean specifically like rape or incest. And no, incest would be the earliest one in our life that we might experience. And of course, rape in here in our lives too. But those are only the two most dramatic forms. So, and I also want to say, in my sensitivity level, even as I'm talking like this, I start talking and I'm just going into the truth of the matter. But then I can feel the shifts happening inside myself because I can feel the shifts happening in you. Even if you watch this years after I've done this, I can still pick those things up, believe it or not. And so I'm changing the tone just for a moment to say, I know this is challenging. I know that the topic is challenging. I know it's, unhealthy or challenging or traumatic experiences of any kind, and especially sexual kind. I understand what it does to our heart, our soul, our nervous system, our energy systems, and so on. So just do your best to breathe and hang in there. Just breathe and try to center and do your best to kind of calibrate into spirit. Ask God for some help for you to be able to hear the topic today. Now, I find the topic to be beautiful and profound, even though it's about trauma. I find it to be beautiful and profound because, first of all, when I think of someone who's been abused, I don't think of them as being labeled as abused. I think of this beautiful soul and even the beautiful body that their soul inhabits. And, terrible things happening to it. But I think of the soul, the person, and I feel sympathy and empathy and connection and all these different feelings, basically for the person. I feel for them. And it's important that we all feel for each other and our traumas and life's issues. But at the same time, to not make that person forever labeled as a helpless victim of some kind. This is a soul, and for some reason, their soul has gone through such and such, whatever it is. Even if it's just financial challenge, it still hurts. It's still scary. On that note, when people say, well, how do I know if I've had a traumatic experience? Very simple. A trauma is defined, by me anyway, trauma is defined as anything that lacks love's presence. Anything that lacks love's presence is traumatizing. In other words, anything that lacks God, is trauma. It's traumatic to not feel God's presence. It's a beautiful definition. Do I think that mainstream world is going to embrace that definition? No, because my definition incorporates anything that lacks God's presence, and the mainstream world doesn't really understand or bring God into everything. So they're not going to get it. They're going to get into intellectual labels of what trauma is. They're going to define it as something neurological or psychological only. It isn't. It's spiritual and everything else, potentially. So we've all had, if you look at it that way, traumatic, the definition, and then you bring yourself into relationship, we've likely had traumatizing relationships, traumatizing communications in our life. But today's topic's focusing on trauma related to intimate or sexual experiences. When we're choosing to be sexual or even intimate on any level, we're really being vulnerable. We're really being open. And I've been a teacher of sacred sexuality and sexual healing for 30, 40, whatever years. And when I think of, like I said, when I think of people that have gone through trauma, I see them as such beautiful people. Sometimes it's very sad, and sometimes it's very just, hurtful what they've gone through, what we've all gone through. I understand that. I'm not saying I just put on rose-colored glasses, but the work I've done has been almost unbelievable to the average person. To a counselor, an average counselor, clinical counselor, they've heard some horrible things, of course, but they're often hearing it just from a intellectual audible level. They're hearing with their ears. It's audible, like to their ears. I hear what's happening. Their heart feels it sometimes, of course. And they're often trained, not all, they're often trained to just listen and make notes and evaluate. For me to do sexual healing work also, to hold a person while they're remembering these experiences and they're collapsing, they're screaming, they're challenged with all that feeling, it really takes it to another level to hear a man or woman remembering such horrid things. And yet, when they come out to the light at the end of the tunnel, I swear I'm getting chills right now just remembering and feeling it, It's just breathtaking. Yeah, it's really hard to go through those kinds of things. It's kind of like in Greek mythology. A lot of us would go, oh, I want to be like the Greek mythology of Diana or this goddess or that goddess. I want to walk through the forest, nature, and have animals walk up to me and I pet them. And, that's a wonderful part of mythology. But all mythology also explains that the hero who's walking through the stories of any mythology, the hero typically doesn't just get born, walk through the forest, pet the head of a beautiful, deer, stag, or bird or whatever, and then ascend. Usually they go through hell in their process. And what that's telling us in part is that we're coming to Earth. We chose to make Earth and this solar system and the universe a part of our journey. And you're not going to have a complete awakening without walking through hell, Hades in Greek mythology. You end up, all souls, they say in Greek mythology, all souls have to journey to the underworld. What do you think the underworld symbolizes? Well, personal hell, your own issues, your traumas, or whatever. Yeah, it is. But it's also, the underworld is your unconscious self, your subconscious, the parts that we would rather not think about or remember. But look at what nature, or look what mythology, and look what the very nature of life is trying to do for us. It's like saying you can't actually awaken without working on the hidden issues, memories. A Course in Miracles has a couple times it makes reference to hide nothing from Spirit, hide nothing from the Divine Mother, the Holy Spirit. Hide nothing. Choose to have nothing you would not show to her. Mom, this happened to me today. I remember, and you might remember, times when we've had accidents when we're little, I'm saying. And it could have been, we peed ourselves. It could have been somebody's bullying us. Things that weren't very nice. And Mom, well, how was school? It was fine. She senses often. What do you mean? It seems like something's, what happened? Nothing. Well, you have a scuff mark. You're all dirty. What happened? And why, guys, are we so embarrassed to just be honest and bring light to our hurts? Why do we want to run and hide this? And you can say, well, because people will laugh. It's true. People are pretty insensitive and screwed up in that regard. But it's not going to help to hide it. So I have to say this. Yes, people seem to cause us to do things like hide our wounds. But we're not doing ourselves much good the way we treat ourselves and hide these things. First of all, take responsibility and own that we also have chosen to hide our stuff, not just everybody else and what they might think. We allowed ourselves to believe that and keep our stuff hidden. Furthermore, you could excuse, well, when we're little, we didn't know what to say. True, I'll give you that. But now you're an adult. So what good is it? How could it possibly be convincing us that there's a value in hiding these things? There isn't. There isn't a value. Now, that said, that doesn't mean I'm shaming you or wronging you for hiding such things. In fact, you might be convinced you still need to hide it. What I'm saying is that I affirm the day will come where you no longer feel a need to hide it. And I think it's a glorious day. When I work with clients, and I'm saying to you too, I'm not just telling you my stories, I'm saying to all of us, when we set in our mind, as a friend, as a parent, and so on, when we set in our mind that we are a safe vessel, and we set the intention to say to those people that come to us, or whatever people in our lives, what happened? Well, I don't like to talk about it. Well, let's try. Well, no, and then, sometimes they'll say, well, fine, such and such happened. Really, when? Wow, you're persistent. I don't know, when I was little. What age were you? Those of you who have had sessions with me on this topic, or any topic really, you know that I'm, kind of a pain that way, in a good way. I'm not going to have you spending your time and money, and my time too, going nowhere. More counselors really would be so much more effective and so much more blessed if they would almost insist that the clients step forward. And it helps us to be a safe space. If they can sense, just like the animal nature of animals themselves and the animal nature of people, if they sense in any way that we're kind of asking for our own weird reasons, our agendas, or that we're just not safe if we're for some reason going to share those disclosures to other people, and so on and so on, anything that makes us feel unsafe, even energetically we feel unsafe, they're right to keep their stuff to themselves. They're right to be kind of doubtful. I've only had in I don't know how many tens of thousands of clients I must have had by now. I can only remember one or two in all these years, 30 or 40 years I've been doing this. I think it's 40 years now. Clients that didn't want to talk about it. When they chose not to, I think in the one or two instances, I might have said, well, okay, well, let's talk about something else to be loving and helpful in some other way. But I know that in again, I can only remember a couple instances, I would say that my tendency when someone has said no thanks, or when they tried to say no thanks, and then they change their mind sometimes, which is, I said to them, then let's stop. And that to me is, basically a little knock on the head that, hey, you want to keep this, keep it. I'm not going to do it with you. I'm not going to be part of that. And I'm not being hurtful or hateful. I'm saying you have a chance. This is the right time. This is the right place. We can do it. And I feel confident in that. And you all can feel confident in that. Now, I'm not saying you're always the right person. They might need to go to a professional. They might need to go to someone else, a sponsor or whatever. I'm just saying if you choose to, you can learn to be a safer and safer person for others to be able to disclose. And I said, as I was saying a little while ago, it's a horrible thing, abuse of any kind, but God, to be a safe person for others, and they come to you and they open up and disclose, I just think it's the most beautiful thing in the world. Even when the person is just shamed or shut down on some intimate level, I just think it's so beautiful when they come forward. I know that there are what they call sexual surrogates. There's a couple of movies that have been made about that, I think made very tactfully, very beautifully, where they share, what the life is like for a sex surrogate. Now, there's different kinds. There's people that do sex therapy, and what they mean is, I have training a little bit more about the wounding around sexuality as well as the pleasures around sexuality. I have more training so we can talk about more stuff around sexuality. That's what the average sex therapist title label means. But that doesn't always work. It's not always about chit chat. It does help a lot of people for that foot in the door to get the conversation started. I think it's great. It's better than nothing. But there's another level, the second level of sex therapy, where it's literally and figuratively hands-on. That means instead of just talking about, tell me what happened, when they say, well, this person, forced themselves on me, that person might do a little bit of body work, and my breath was affected, and you start doing some body work maybe to help the breath open up. Now it becomes something more visceral and somatic related to the body, and it's beautiful. So that's hands-on, but so there's somebody still working on us in the level 2 of sex therapy. Don't just go to somebody that says they do sex therapy and expect that. Expect instead that 80% of the time they're going to be counselors talking to you about those issues. But there are a couple, one or two out of every 10. If you go to somebody who does sex therapy, it means hands-on. But you'd have to study that, research it to make sure that's what they do, if that's what you want. I would say I would never try to jump to stage 2 or 3, which I'll get to in a moment, without at least addressing level 1. If you've never even talked about these issues, you should not jump to 2 and 3. Let's find out what you even feel. Well, I don't remember, so I'm going to go get some body work so it'll help me remember, or get some hypnosis to help me remember. No. Even if you feel something is off, you feel just really hyper inhibited, let's say, and you don't know why, that's worth talking. Just talking about that, even to find that out, is enough to get us started. Because you at least have a feeling. Do not assume that you have to have vivid cognitive memories to say that something happened. I personally tell people, let's just talk about it as a feeling. So you feel such and such happened. Now, based on that, where did that come from? What age do you feel you were at? I'll just talk about it on that level, because after a while, the feeling will either fade and it was just a feeling of some kind. For some reason, we'll find out that they and I will discover, or we'll find out the feeling is an actual memory that started as a feeling to be safe, but now it's starting to download as a memory. Let me add, you do not have to have total cognitive memories to heal issues. Now, some of you were like, oh, thank God. Well, you have to be willing to remember. Remember this. I've worked at this a long time, and I've worked such deep spiritual work. I'm blessed and grateful that I have different understanding than many that do this kind of work. So please understand that. Whether you want to credit my experience or my integrity or whatever, if you want to credit one or the other or all of it, trust that I'm saying that, people do not have to remember to heal, but they have to be willing to remember. What's the difference? Well, one means it's like you're putting pressure on the memory. What person, what child, and what adult that's had trauma, especially sexual trauma, is looking forward to remembering? And you're going to put that kind of pressure. You have to remember or else it won't heal. No. Of course not. God would never give you allow that kind of a fate that we put ourselves in. It's hopeless. God is all about hope. Spirit, love, healing, it's all about hope. So you don't have to remember, although you might remember. Chances are good you're going to remember something, but you don't have to. But you do have to be willing to. Why? Because your willingness to remember, if something would be remembered or come up, it shows that you're willing to not be afraid of it. I'm willing to remember if I need to remember. And it shows like a courage. It shows I'm not going to allow that person from the past to keep me psychologically paralyzed, immobilized. No. I'm willing to remember if I need to remember. Who will decide that? Well, it's kind of a cooperative decision and venture between you and the Holy Spirit. God will, the Divine Mother will weave into your mind and unplug a lot of stuff you will not even remember. And that's fine. Thank God, that a lot of that just gets dispersed. There are some things that the Divine Mother is going to say to you, sweetheart, I love you and I know this is painful, but I'm going to ask you to look at this one piece. She'll know why. You don't have to know why. But if a memory comes up, trust that it's likely safe to do so and it's necessary in some way, on some level or in some way. Now, I'm saying when it's done organically and gently. If a therapist, whether it's first level, second level, or third level sex therapist, is working on you and they seem to force the issue, that doesn't mean they're representing the Divine Mother. You watch for that. And you have to remember to tell your healers, therapists, counselors, I am going to remain in control. If I don't want to do something, I need to say so. And they, of course, should encourage that. If they say no, you have to let me lead, I wouldn't do it. I just wouldn't do it. But there's an interesting dance that you have to do. Some of you have heard me do talks on similar topics, and I've said this before, but when it comes to trauma is when a human being was brought to the edge of a precipice, an edge of a cliff, and then pushed over. The trauma is being pushed over. You fall, you're hurt, meaning you're falling and psychologically wounded. You're raped, you're molested, you're beat, you're whatever it is. You've been brought to an edge and then pushed over. The person is hurting another person. The person is wounding, traumatizing, they're being selfish, and it's almost like a form of torture when people do that. Healing is almost exactly the same. There's a person involved, another person involved very often. The one person is brought to the edge, just like in the other instance. The only difference is they're not pushed over the edge. So if two people make love, they're at the edge because something could have gone. They're at the edge. They're vulnerable. They're open. It's such a beautiful thing. But if somebody gets to that same beauty and then something selfish, hurtful takes place, and the other party feels so open and vulnerable, it becomes completely traumatic. So it's very similar up to the one point. The one, we stay safe. The other, unsafe. Safety is the common theme to any form of healing. That's the theme. If without a sense of safety, no healing can actually take place. So when you're doing healing work, you're going to feel vulnerable, potentially scared again. And there are people that say, "Oh God, no, that's terrible. It should be just years and years of gradual therapy with only one word added each week, forever they go." And that's fine. That's the level they're at as a healer and therapist. That's safe for them, and they have the right to take their time. If I were you, I would think twice about whether you want to take that much time. Do you want to be 90 before you even complete a sentence about former trauma? So no, I wouldn't anyway. So it can be very challenging. The second level, again, is body work. The third level is what some people describe as like the sexual surrogate, where a woman might say to the male client, instead of just, "So tell me what issues you have." "Well, I have some shyness and hang-ups about my genitalia." "Oh, well, tell me about that." "Okay, well, where do you think that came from?" So that's fine to talk. A surrogate might say, "Okay, well, we've had 3 sessions on that. Let's do this. Let's disrobe." And some of you are going to think, "What? That's crazy." No, it can be very beautiful if it's a real thing, if it's a safe thing. Let's disrobe. And then you ask the man, "Now describe yourself to me." A lot of women are shown this technique. Sit before a mirror and describe yourself. You can tape it, the conversation verbally. You can do an audio tape of it or make notes or whatever it is, but talk to yourself. And you think, well, big deal, I can undress. It's very interesting because, and be patient here, when you walk through somebody through a somatic experience, not just an intellectual one. For example, I've had clients where I say, they say, "Mom or Dad never held me." And I say, "Okay, stand across the room and now do me a favor, put your arms out like you're a child wanting to be held. And then imagine that I'm your father or mother. And then do me a favor and start slowly walking towards me with your arms out." It sounds like a simple experience, but you're not doing it like you're Frankenstein. Your arms are, and you're walking forward. Your arms are out and you're channeling the memory of being a child. In a sense, that's what starts to happen. Channeling, using that term, is almost like imagining that you are such and such, and then their feedback, their consciousness comes through you. So it's the same. So I say, "Put your arms up," and the person starts walking towards me. And anytime I've done that exercise, they almost could never make it from one side of the room to me without breaking down, because you're walking through. I did one time a shamanic journey workshop. I've done that several times, but one time that I did it, it was such an interesting thing because I mean, here I am leading the workshop, and still I partly participated as well. And I gave them some of the stuff of my unconscious to work with, and we all, because what we did was we all sort of reenacted, and so we it's almost like so just to keep it simple, we reenacted, and so it's like I closed my eyes, I gave them some information, and then the group, my team, whoever I'm working with, my few people, and so on, there's different groups, and my team quickly figures out how to reenact what I told them. I open my eyes, and I mean, I could have just went, well, I already, I've told them the information. I expect, now I know what I'm going to see. It didn't matter, man. Wow. As soon as they did it, I mean, everything in me just brought to that moment, brought to that memory. And wow, some tears in the eyes, and wow, it's, when done right, it's kind of like what some people do with theater. Role play is another example. They're all helpful in their different ways because they're bringing us to something that we otherwise were guarding and shielding from. Hypnotherapy, can be helpful to kind of fly in under the radar. EMDR is another technique, or EFT. There's different things that can help us sort of fly in under the radar. The key is finding out which one most serves us to bring us the most healing. That's the key. So in the third category of sexual healing, it involves the surrogate. Now, there's two levels of this third category. The first level is, I'm still working on you. We might be sharing intimacy. I say we, meaning anybody you go to that's doing this kind of work. Some people will say, they'll call themselves tantric healers. That doesn't mean they're good. Just like any counselor, just the label, license, doesn't mean they're good. Doesn't mean they understand you. It doesn't mean they care. They might have just done that like any other license they got. It was an occupation, it was something to do, and they may not be heartfelt. Anybody in any occupation may not be meant to be there, and they may not be heartfelt in that position. So I'm just saying that there's a lot of, unhealthy stuff that goes on in lots of professions, including the health and healing field. And same unfortunately, for so-called tantric healers. They call themselves dakinis. It's a Sanskrit word. Dakini or tantrika, daka. There are different terms from Sanskrit and from the old schools that they use, and they use them so easily and flippantly. Oh, I took a one-day workshop, so now I'm a dakini. Not at all, man. Without the level of love and care and integrity, they should not be allowed to do this. But there's not national licensing, thank God. But there's not national licensing that could, ensure that they're going to have the integrities. But of course, national licensing doesn't mean there's love. So it's a really tricky thing. But if you're in the third category, there's two levels. The first, I'm still working on you. We might be doing very intimate work, but I'm still working on you. There's still a distinction. Yes, it could be intimate, sexual, but there's still someone working on someone. And that distinction helps everybody. It really does. But intimacy is such a twisted topic, and sexuality, that every bit of stuff comes into the play. You could be somebody that's not even abused, but you could just feel lonely. And you don't know how to just receive this healing without getting all emotionally enmeshed and start falling in love. Because as the fable goes, and this goddess has been in a trance and she's going to drink this potion, or the first kiss will wake her up, and so on. And she falls in love with the person that woke her up, that gave her that potion or whatever. It's like some fairy tale. And it's kind of like that. When you've been frozen, when you've been wounded, it's easy to fall in love. I mean, there's people that do transference on counselors, doctors, coaches, life coaches, even their coaches. I mean, there's people that are in athletics fall in love with their coaches. Even same gender, it still happens because you're in such often nobody ever loved me. And, you seem to care about me, so I'm falling in love with you. I could even not be gay and still fall in love with my male coach because of the deep levels of neediness. It can be very confusing. Male, female, gay, straight, whatever, it doesn't matter. All of it can be very confusing. There's no complete immunity to this because we're dealing with the human psyche, and it works and lives and moves on so many levels when we're on this planet. I mean, it works in dimensions that you can't even see, so it's hard to just assure or ensure a specific response from somebody. A friend of mine who was a very successful Dakini sexual, surrogate or whatever, I remember her saying in her training, she said, I had a tantric teacher. He was kind of short, bald, heavy set. I thought, well, and she was a beautiful girl. And she's like, I fell in love with him. It's like, there was no, she was saying, I'm not making fun of short, bald, fat. I'm saying this is what he looked like, and it wasn't her ideal of I'm going to fall in love with a guy. And she did anyway. Because, first of all, bodies and looks are illusions anyway. So need not judge those things, and we need not get caught up on them. But it also does mean that if you are looking a certain way, male or female, you would think it's probably safer for you to work on people. And to some degree, it is. But it doesn't ensure that you're not going to have that transference. Because my point is, healing is such a profound experience. All other things fall away. What you thought was inhibitions, or you already feel like you know what kind of person you're digging, or you're gay or you're straight, so the other won't cross over. I've done work on gay women, and they still have had feelings at times. I think it's beautiful. I'm not shaming for having feelings. I'm just saying when people have profound healing, in a sense, all everything's off. All deals are off. All bets are off, because it's such a profound multi-level thing. Now, if ever there is the second level, which is where, but very rare should this be, where the healer, Dakini or Tantrika or whatever, where that person who's walking you through, the sex surrogate, is walking you through, it is possible to say, now, I've done what I can do for you, and the two people consensually, let's drop the labels now and make love. I think it's a beautiful thing. I think it's next to impossible to pull it off. So don't think that I'm like promoting it. It's next to impossible, because there are so many, first of all, there's so many layers of healing that would have to happen first. Secondly, levels of responsibility that most human beings don't have. Responsibility meaning that there's no transference. We're able to let go of labels and experience love. And I mean love in its unconditional, beautiful sense. You're sort of dissolving from the physical self and just dancing, like energy fields, just dancing in delight and in the light. It's a very, very beautiful thing. And it's something that every human being will eventually experience on some level. It may not be in the physical sexual level, but they're going to experience what it's like. Everybody, you can't ascend into heaven consciousness without ascending heavenly in the earth consciousness. You have to experience heaven on earth before you experience heaven. And that includes lovemaking, and I don't mean sexual, but it can be sexual. I'm referring to even lovemaking, the total love with another person, no agendas, no issues. You're not trying to push them one way, pull them another way. You're not trying to control them. You're not trying to get anything from them. You're not asking them to fulfill love your parents didn't give you. It's not wrong that you have those feelings, but that's different level of healing, sexual healing. That's level 1, or sometimes level 2. But you don't go into that second part of the third level, lovemaking, completely letting go, and without doing layers and layers and layers of work. So the healers, which could be you, it doesn't mean you have some certification. I'm just saying that when you decide to be a safe person for another and they go to that place, it's really in the heart that makes you that healer or not. It's really in the heart. So here's a couple of quick examples. And I know that some of the things I share, I don't, like myself, I don't do the work much anymore at all. For many years now, I haven't. And even in the last 10 years, there's only a couple people I've chosen to work with on any level beyond, let's say, the second level. And even the second level, remember, that's body work. You could still be clothed. But on the second level, there's two parts: clothed, second level body work, and unclothed. And so, I've chosen to almost do nothing beyond the fundamental levels of the second level anymore for all these years, with just a couple of exceptions. And it's because of how, challenging it is for people to go to that place. There's a few reasons I chose, and one of it is just because I've done it for so long. I just love teaching people how to do it rather than me doing it. And even when I taught intensives, 5-day intensives on sacred sexuality and so forth, most of the time, almost all the time, it was all about me teaching others how to do these things. And then I would step away and have them work on each other at whatever level, first level, second level, whatever level, and let them do that. It was not about me being the therapist or the participant. I really enjoyed and preferred teaching it and saying, you guys can do this yourselves. When someone comes to me and says, Michael, this was profound, in all these years I've done this, Michael, this was profound. I have friends, or I myself want further work, or I have friends that need this. What do we do? How do we find you? Where do we go to get this from you? I would say to them, why don't you bring your friends? I'll teach you how to do this on each other. Do you have a partner? Let me teach them how to do this for you. I would rather empower others than them rely on me, especially with such a sensitive, vulnerable topic. But it is such a, risque, sensual, sexual, traumatic, healing trauma, such a multi-leveled conversation that it really takes very courageous people to do this work. So anytime you even talk to a person, do not underestimate the power of what you're doing. And I don't mean to become arrogant. I mean, don't underestimate that they're sharing with you. It might take way more than you think it does for them to tell you what they're telling you, and you really should be honored. Just wow. And how many times I've had people say, I've never told anybody. That's pretty amazing. But it doesn't surprise me. I don't go, well, I'm special. I just, wow, God, I'm grateful. But it doesn't surprise me because I know what I'm doing. I believe in, go in with integrity. Go into any session, any conversation. Do your best to have integrity and want to help. If you start your day every day saying, how can I be helpful today? Then what's the breadth of which you're willing to do that? Do you mean I want to be helpful only conversationally, only financially, only supportively? I mean, do you have limits? And I think it's great. If you have limits, those are your boundaries. You can honor them. I also think it's great to say, I can maturely handle more than I did last year. So if somebody starts telling me, other material, deeper material, I'm going to do my best to be present. I never had a hard time going to that place. I never thought to myself, God, this is way too much information. I want to, scale it back. But that doesn't mean you should jump that far. It just worked for me. I remember, I've shared this story once before. I remember a conference, though, I was at. Before the conference started, I was on tour in this region, and I was doing, it was 10 and 12 sessions per day, every day, with almost no breaks at all, but maybe 60-second breaks, but just work. And session after session, and I remember so many people having these profound changes and healings and miracles that one of them was telling one of the other spiritual teachers that arrived to do their, at the conference to participate. And a few of them went out to lunch and dinner or something, and they were telling this spiritual author teacher, who you would know if I told you the name, God, and Michael, and he did this, and it's amazing. This other person, God, I had some session too, and God, it was amazing, because it was all about sexual trauma in this, unfortunately, several of these people, and they started talking about what they healed and what came up. And the teacher, author, said, let me interrupt you guys. I'm not interested in this conversation. I'm not Michael. I can't handle these kinds of things. I'm not interested, but I also don't know what to say, and I really can't handle hearing this kind of thing. So it was like they were like, oh. So they needed to step back a little and honor those boundaries. And I'm glad that the teacher honored their boundaries. But it also means you could be an author and teacher and whatever and wise and still not be able to navigate this topic, because it can be so scary and so challenging, so foreign in some ways. Not to mention that sometimes you're rubbing up against those person's wound, those people, they're the wounds. The wounds of those people could be known to them, could be unknown. But when no, they could be showing you right there that there's something going on. Do I think you should say, oh, hold on, everybody, let's not even order dinner? It seems to me that someone's got some unconscious stuff that they don't want to talk about. You'd never do that to somebody when you're healing. Don't be preachy. Don't tell people they have wounds. Let them come to you. Let them decide if they want to share with you. And then go to that place in the most loving, gentle way you can. So when I said traumatic, lacking love's presence, so I want to make sure we include this. If you've been drunk and had sex, if you've not wanted to be with a person, even without rape, you just preferred not being with them. If you were angry when you were with them, you were not fully in a loving experience, it's still traumatic. Many clients have told me they've never had sex without being drunk, ever in their life. That's, wow, Others have said, I've never been in my body. Now, what you don't do is say, well, what we're going to do, obviously, linearly, you haven't been in your body when you made love, so we're going to make love and I'm going to make sure you stay in your body. That, logically, that sounds reasonable, but there's so many things you should be doing. There's level 1 healing you can do to help teach them to be in their body. You don't ever let somebody tell you have to go to level 3, actual interaction, sexual interaction. Go through level 1, might do it. Level 2, if you're a great healer, you should be able to do it with level 1 or 2. I taught more people more often how to have sexual healing and sensual experiences without disrobing than I ever did by them going further. I'm not saying you can't go further. I'm saying I never allowed the goal to be more important than the process itself. So there's so much that can be learned. And I'm just reaching out to all of you saying, look, understand the situation and understand there's levels of healing, but also do not underestimate what you've experienced as though it's not traumatic. If you were not in your body, something wasn't quite right. And every time you did it, you were buzzed, you were drunk, you were wasted, you were out of your body, or you were just angry and not wishing, or wishing you weren't there. All of those things are still traumatic, even though they might not have been incestual, they might not have been rape. They're still trauma. So, I've chosen in my life, I do things like sometimes wrestle with a person or do body work on a person, do things to get them viscerally, somatically in that experience so they can break free of it and say, I'm here now. Oh my God, I'm back. And it can have any kind of release when people have those breakthroughs, cathartic breakthroughs. It could be tears. It could be orgasms, believe it or not. It's whatever they're going to do. It doesn't matter. We don't label it. We don't judge it. They had whatever kind of a release they needed to have. Orgasms are varied in so many different ways, but believe it or not, don't underestimate the fact that a person crying is a form of emotional orgasm. So I've taught people, that when you have a partner and you're making love, you're thinking there's certain things you want to do or have done. But when you're with a person and they start crying, what you do is you continue making love. But I'm not talking about having sex. You're having sex and making love, they start crying, you shift. You continue to make love, but not intercourse. You continue to make love by continuing to hold them. You shift it into not the intercourse lovemaking, but the how can I hold you? Are you okay? Silence, possibly rocking. Now, they're at some point potentially going to say, oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, oh my God. No. This is beautiful. It's okay. I'm right here with you. You're still making love, you see, but it's not the human definition of making love. It's sharing love. love, the womb of love. And that's what's supposed to be happening when we make love anyway. I'm not saying all lovemaking is supposed to be just slow and whispery. It can be very sexy and passionate, but you should never lose sense of safety, connectedness. And all of us have had that happen in our lives one way or the other. We lost connection, we lost safety. As a young man, the peer pressure, older brother kind of, hey man, you haven't hooked up yet, haha, making fun. It makes you kind of think something's wrong with you. Girls peer pressure, and the female way in Tantra, it's taught the female way has always had it right, to know to take your time and to think that it needs to be more love-based. And yet gals have learned to become shamed for what they knew was right. So they learned to start being more like males and jumping into this kind of experience. And it's really messed up because they didn't get the experience they knew was a little more healthy and right. And a person can make love slowly and still be out of the, off center. You can be drunk and still have love-making technique look right. Doesn't mean it's right. Mind, body, soul, are you there? And very few people had a first-time experience of that was perfect. Very few people had ongoing experiences like that. And it's fine, to each his own, and all that. But where are you? Did you find a way to have that? And so I close with this. Even if you say, I don't have a partner to do that, I don't know what person I could hire to do that as a surrogate. No. Start right here. Learn to make love with yourself. Learn to be present. Give to the Holy Spirit all wounds, including sexual. Include that in your prayers and surrenderings. And then also, learn to touch your body. Learn to make contact, and even sensually. The concept of masturbation, for example. I'm not saying hyper-masturbate. The word masturbate means to disturb or to draw you off center, because shame was put to so many terms, sexual terminologies, that it's ridiculous. But I call it pleasure yourself. But if I just say pleasure yourself, you might be thinking, oh, well, I love going to the carnival or something, thinking fun things, a movie. Pleasure yourself is a sensual way of saying masturbate. So when you pleasure yourself, don't just sexually stimulate. Sometimes just pause and breathe and touch gently all your skin, because it wires you together instead of one location having one channel to the brain that says, stimulating, get ready. Brain says, got it. Okay, done. Woo. And the brain says, we're having an orgasm. It's very linear. Try to connect the whole and engage the whole body. Try to engage the whole self. And one way to do that is even with slight touch. You might not be tremendously feeling pleasure. That's not the point. You are the dreamer of the dream. You decide the experience. So even if you have very little sensation due to whatever in your life you touch, try to imagine having sensation. Don't go overboard with words and sounds, but any amount. What if I'm not feeling tremendous pleasure? It doesn't matter. I can tell you what it feels like, what it sounds like, to even be safe. It's like a relief. To not have horrid partner that was abusing me being with me right now. To be safe, to be in my own room, my own space, and it feels so exciting. Giggle. Just remember the sensual experience and allow yourself to feel. And yes, the bells and whistles go off. That's fine if that happens. If all you do is cry, it's fine too. Just allow. The safety, the expansiveness of allowing is beautiful. It's perfect. It's orgasmic in the truest sense. So the body will catch up at some point. But if you die and stay inhibited hurt, you carry it with you. But if you can say, even without a physical orgasm, if you can say, but I'm open. I feel orgasmic in the sense that nobody's holding me back. I don't have the wounds of the shaming of my religion or my mother or the abuse of a father or a husband or a partner. I don't carry that. I allow myself to feel. Someone abused me and told me, be quiet. I'm not quiet. I mean, me. I get to sound. I get to come out. It's beautiful. That's orgasmic in the truest sense. It means to release, to let go. It doesn't just mean reach a pinnacle of some kind in a linear sense. It means holistically. So allow yourself and encourage others in a gentle, loving, tactful way. You know, I don't believe in smut-mouthing people. I don't believe in, talking in a vulgar kind of a hurtful way that, in that, especially when it comes to that topic. It's important to really honor and bring love to it, as best you can. And I pray that this is really making sense and can make a difference in your life. I invite you, we're having a course on intimacy, relationships. It's about exploring true intimacy, sexuality, and relationships. We're going to do all three of those topics in this few weeks starting. We just finished our free intro, but it starts this coming week. So it's a Wednesday night, couple hours each Wednesday for just a few weeks, and it'll be done. Join us if you feel like you'd like to know more about this. I know how intimidating and inhibiting the topic can be. Healing trauma, sexual trauma, and sexual pleasure. We will talk about pleasure too. And that could be a little, challenging for some people, but hang in there, because there's no thing in you or I that should be left stuck. It's all about coming forward into who we really are. All right? So God bless you all. Peace be with you, and thanks so much for listening. Join us for this course if you'd like to. And also remember, we have a 4-day intensive starting on Thanksgiving. You can watch it online. So even if you can't join us here in person in Sedona, it's a 4-day course on awakening Christ consciousness. And you can join us for that, online or in person. And it's wonderful because it's a good way to join with your spiritual family during the holidays of giving thanks. And giving thanks then launches us into new levels of awareness for the new year. So God bless you all. Thank you. Bye-bye.